Okay, so today we're going to learn about praying in a minyan that's conducted in a different Nusach, whether because there isn't a synagogue in your Nusach in town, or you're traveling somewhere and you just happen to walk in and you realize that they're not yours. And so there's a discussion about it because it's not halacha per se. It's not something that was determined already in the time of Babylon. In the time of Babylon, most of the Jewish people were living in Babylon, and so it only happens afterwards. By the way, I will send afterwards a link to the story of how the five Geonim were kidnapped and were basically taken from port to port, and that's how Ashkenazi and Sephardi communities that were already in other places in Europe and North Africa received proper leadership. It's an amazing story, but not for now. So some poskim say that when a person who is accustomed to one nusach goes to pray in a minyan held in a different nusach, he must pray according to the nusach of the minyan he is attending, because the individuals must follow the majority. If he practices according to his own minhag in front of the people in the congregation, it constitutes a transgression of the prohibition lo titgodedu, which everybody agrees is not exactly one of the 613, but it's just a direction of what to behave, and it's basically, in parentheses, fragmenting the nation into different groups. This prohibition disallows having one court of law, Beit Din, with some judges who rule according to the method of Beit Shammai and others who rule according to the Beit Hillel, so that the Torah will not be divided into two seemingly different Torahs. That's the explanation in Yevamot according to the Rif and the Rosh. Hence, the people of one synagogue should not pray in two different Nusachim. Furthermore, the Chachamim teach in Pesachim that a person must not stray from the custom of a place so as not to generate dispute. And the way that my father understood this particular Lotus Godedu is that if even if we had a minyan for our family, because we have a very large family and there were many kids and adults who are already bar mitzvah, he said, no, we are going, if there isn't room in the synagogue, then we will have our own minyan. But if there is room in the synagogue, we will all be together with them and will continue to be a unifying force in that community. And that's really what Rav Melamed is trying to say. According to most poskim, one is permitted to pray in his family's nusach, those parts of the prayer service that are recited silently, like the Amidah. Since the differences are not noticeable, there is no fear of dispute, nor is there any transgression of the prohibition lo titgodedu. However, prayers recited aloud should be prayed in the nusach of the minyan, so as not to create controversy and disparity among the members of the congregation. One who must regularly pray in a minyan conducted in a different nusach, for example, because he moves to a place in which the only minyan prays in a different nusach, or because he prays in a minyan that will strengthen his religiosity, as we discussed yesterday and the day before, is permitted to decide whether to pray in nusach or adhere to his own family's custom, reciting the parts said aloud like the rest of the congregation. In the next paragraph, he's going to discuss also tunes and dialects, actual enunciation of words. The Chazan leading the prayer service in the synagogue, employing a nusach that is different from his own, must pray according to the minhag of the place, because he is praying as the leader, as the people's emissary. However, for the silence prayers, he may pray according to his own minhag. So I grew up with what's called nusach separat Hasidi, like we talked about yesterday, and so the shul that I now lead services in Fredericton is Ashkenaz, and so when I say the Amidah and also the second blessing before the Shema, I actually do it in the Nusach Sefarad, and then when I repeat aloud, it's obviously in Ashkenaz. So the preservation of Minhagim, as we discussed, in addition to maintaining the Nusach of the prayer, entails upholding the pronunciation of the prayers. Each community, the Yemenites, the Sephardim, and the Ashkenazim, pronounces the prayers according to its own particular dialect. Just very quickly, the Yemenites pronounce the segol, the three dots underneath the letter, like the word eretz. They pronounce that like we pronounce the kamats. And the Ashkenazim, we talked about it a little bit yesterday. The kamatz is more like an AU or AW, and there's more and more and more dialects being discovered. I think that the Russian Jews pronounce a full cholam as oi, so le'oi lam va'ed, like that's what it would sound like. And the Sephardim, of course, don't have the stuff that we have. So all of these things are being discussed. So in addition, the Chatchila, it's proper that each ethnic group continue to pray in its own traditional tunes. Clearly, it is permissible to introduce new melodies, and we discussed in the previous two chapters ago about bringing melodies that aren't kosher if they remind people of the not so nice words of that song. However, in the main part of the prayer, the traditional tune that was sanctified throughout the generations should be preserved. For that reason, a person must initially pray in a synagogue which conducts a service in his family Nusach. Judaism is comprised of numerous different Minhagim. The Nusach of the Sephardim is divided into many customs. Concerning matters of halacha, the key distinctions are evident between those who practice according to the Shulchan Aruch and those who follow the Ben Ish Chai. Furthermore, so Rav Mordechai Eliyahu, when he realized that Rav Ovadia Yosef is writing volumes and volumes of halacha, he basically instructed his students about what the differences are. I don't know them because I'm not Sephardi, but I know, for example, that Rav Ovadia Yosef allows you to add notches to a situation of the Shabbos clock, to continue a situation that's going. Either you want it to turn off for longer or you want it to go on for longer. You're allowed to do that according to Rav Ovadia Yosef. According to the Ben Ish Chai and Rav Mordechai Eliyahu, you are not allowed to. They say that the Shabbos clock itself is muktzeh and you're not allowed to touch it. And that applies also to Ashkenazim. Most Ashkenazim do exactly what I just said about adding to a situation that already is going. So let's say that you realize at 9 o'clock in the morning that your guests that you invited aren't going to leave until 3 p.m., but your Shabbos clock is set to turn it off at 1 p.m., you're allowed to extend it according to almost everybody except for Rav Mordechai Eliyahu, who follows the Ben Ish Chai, who is his rabbi. Furthermore, I don't know how to get rid of this. There is a specific Nusach for Jews from North Africa, while the differences in Nusach and halachic matters among those from North Africa and Iraq and Syria are relatively minor. Their melodies contrast more strikingly, and I'm sure that Rabbi Melamed visited all these different synagogues, because otherwise he would not write any of the following paragraphs. Even among the immigrants from North Africa, there are such distinct disparities in melody, so that Algerians sound dissonant, which means not very melodious, not very harmonious, to Moroccans, and the Jews from Libya, both Algerians and Moroccans, sound off-key. To perfectly preserve the numerous Minhagim, there would have to be individual synagogues from immigrants from Tripoli, Tunis, Algeria, and Morocco, as well as different synagogues for immigrants from Iraq, Syria, Persia, and Turkey. And we thought our life was complicated. And the among Ashkenazim is going to give the same exact example. Among Ashkenazi immigrants, there are different Minhagim as well. The primary distinction is between the Hasidim and those who were against them. Still, there are other significant differences in types of diction and melody. The tunes of those who pray in the Nusach Ashkenaz from Western Europe are completely different from the tunes in the Nusach Ashkenaz from Lithuania. There's actually two different books of Slichos, and if you buy the wrong one for your synagogue, you need to go to the store and say, I need the other one. So one says Nusach Polin and the other one says Nusach Lita, I think. Furthermore, regarding diction, there are at least 4 variations of pronunciation, those of immigrants from Lithuania, Poland, Galicia, and Hungary. Different sects of Hasidim have different tunes and pronunciation. Additionally, among the Yemenites, and we'll end with that, there are 2 main Nusachim, Baladi and Shami. So, because we're not going to find all these different synagogues, I'm going to skip to the bottom and then tell you a story about the Yemen. So therefore, in each and every place, it is necessary to weigh the pros and cons, i.e. the importance of preserving the Minhagim against the significance of establishing a strong, solid community. When there are enough families from the same ethnic group living in one place, enabling them to establish a large synagogue while preserving the traditions of their Minhagim, all the better. But when the number of families is insufficient, it is best that they join a group with customs similar to their own, providing that they form a strong congregation. If the consolidation of similar ethnic groups will not be adequate to ensure a strong community, it is better that all the members of the different groups, Sephardim, Ashkenazim, and Yemenites, merge to become one community. And like I told you, it's only a few years ago that Rabbi Melamed, in his own community, established the third Minyan, which surprisingly was Sephardi. The first two were Ashkenazi and Yemenites. So here's a story about the Yemenites. My other brother, Yaakov, his rabbi is Rav Bentzi Amar, who's originally from Yemen, and he married a Yemenite woman, but unfortunately, he didn't realize that their family is divided between Shami and Baladi. And so whenever they go to visit the in-laws in Rishon LeZion, he says, I can't find a minyan for Mincha and Marv, even though there's two synagogues right across the street from each other. And he was trying to understand what's going on. So apparently, and this is not recorded in Tanakh as far as I know, Ezra went personally to the Jews of Yemen to announce to them that we are returning to Jerusalem. And the majority of them said, we're going to stay behind. We have strong communities. Some of our people here have been here since Solomon, not since the Babylonian exile. And so he cursed them. One version of the curse is that they should all be poor, which I don't think really happened. But the other version, which Rav Bentzi told me, is he thinks that what he told them was that they're always going to find differences and be separate and separate and separate, and that way they'll never have a proper strong minyan or congregation because of this curse. Apparently, according to the same story, they cursed Ezra back, and somehow the Muslims heard about it, and there's a whole mess there in terms of Chilul Hashem, because like we're not allowed to wash our dirty laundry in public, especially when it comes to Goyim who hate us. And so the Goyim basically started hating the Yemenite Jews because they cursed Ezra, who is one of their 45 prophets mentioned in the Quran. So we'll end with that, and thank you for bearing with me. I don't know what happened to my computer, but...
Can you... is it still recording?